up, everyone? It is your girl JL Beauty 87 here, aka Grace, and today we're getting into another one type of makeup wear now. So I'm gonna move the baby wipes out the way before they make a noise in the whole video. So y'all know I've done a couple of these before where we talked about palettes from the past that were like really hyped up and everybody was crazy about them, and everybody's talking about them. Every time you looked up, everybody do a tutorial with them or recommending them to you during a Sephora sale, or they were in the end of everybody's best of makeup favorites and all that type of stuff. And now it's like where I don't hear anyone talking about any of these things whatsoever. It's like they don't exist to these people anymore. They've moved on to the next thing, like, you know, you have to do in the YouTube world. But I just want to sit back and remind us that, like, you know, if you still have these in your collection, some of these might still like be popular, or some of these might have similar color stories and stuff that they still trying to push to you now, just from different brands, and you forgot about them because, you know, you consume a lot of YouTube like I do, and we just forget sometimes that, you know, other things did exist. So I grabbed a few things. I grabbed some influencer brand stuff. I grabbed some luxury brand stuff. I grabbed some high-end stuff. I tried to grab a whole bunch of different stuff to talk about. I mainly grabbed the eyeshadow palettes as usual. Matter of fact, it's all eyeshadow palettes. Y'all can comment down below and let me know if you want to see some other stuff, but I feel like palettes are like a really popular thing across the whole community, so that's why I usually try to throw those in. But it's like, it's some foundations and concealers and some other stuff that people hype and raved about for years, and now you don't see or hear about it. So we can talk about those too next time if you want. Comment down below and let me know. But let's get started on this. So do y'all remember when everybody was talking about the Novel Dreamy palette? When everybody was just talking about a novel in general, when they first came out, this was the first palette they came out with. I think it's Mariah Leonard is who I heard about this palette from. Her and her friend Jay Kissa, which I think Jay Kissa makes lifestyle videos now, or somebody told me that, I don't know. But this is what the palette looks like on the inside. As you can see, it's just a classic, you know, like kind of mauve palette with some pops of purple and like a pop of berry or something. But this palette was hyped enough, and I can't even front, I really liked this palette too. The only thing that sucked was, if I remember correctly, the shade Delirium didn't work that great or that well in the palette. But it's like, I feel like nobody really talks about the brand Novel anymore at all as a whole, and I'm like, why aren't people talking about Novel anymore? But I guess because they come with a lot of repeat color stories, because like they got rid of the Secret palette and then they came out with that new palette that looked really similar to the Secret palette. So I don't know if they just lost their way when it comes to creativity, and that's why people don't buy from them anymore. But I remember when everybody was raving about this palette and just like Novel in general. I'm talking about how wonderful this was, and now you hear crickets from Novel. It's like you'll hear influencers that they send stuff to talk about it every now and again. Like I think and Jessica used to talk about them, but then she got kicked off the PR list and she hasn't really talked about the brand anymore either. But I feel like nobody's really talking about them anymore. And it's like, they had nice stuff, but I feel like they just lost their way, and that's why nobody talks about them anymore. Maybe it's just me. Next palette I have to talk about, I don't like this palette, but I feel like everybody was raving about it. It got sold out, and everybody's talking about how they had to get their hands on it, and everybody was talking about how wonderful it was, which I was surprised, because I feel like a lot of the community feels like me and talks about how they don't like pressed glitter. So it's like, you wanted this palette even though it has so many pressed glitters in it. But I think it's just because of the hype that was behind the brand, which is still pretty hyped. I feel like they're not as hyped as they used to be either, ever since they had that incident with the racial slur against the Asian community. But this is the Juvia's Place Walhalla palette. So this is the first one. If you all remember, I don't like the color story of this palette. I'm not really a huge fan of this palette. Plus it has all these pressed glitters in it. So you got 1, 2, 3. That's 3 too many. Like, I felt like they should have calmed down with the pressed glitters, and I wasn't feeling it, and I didn't like it. And I don't like this palette, honestly. And if you all remember, I didn't rave about it when it came out, but I feel like so many other people did, till I felt the need to share it now. Because I'm like, everybody was raving and talking about this palette. And I was like, but why are y'all doing it? I mean, it wasn't because of the quality. It was just because, I don't know, this color story just doesn't speak to me. It's like, you got some random blues and some pinks and then some green and yellow combination. This neutral situation here, and then like this wannabe berry, like pink, purple situation. I don't know, but I just wasn't feeling the palette. But I feel like so many people were, and so many people were talking about it. So, you know, y'all know the Walhalla 2 is my holy grail and wonderful when it comes to the Walhalla collection. But like, I just feel like people weren't feeling this palette, and they weren't here. I mean, they were feeling it and they were here for it, and then it just fell off the face of earth and nobody cared. But I mean, like, Juvia's Place has come out with so many things since then. I think that palette came out like in 2020. I think that was the holiday 2020 palette. Don't quote me. The second one might have been the holiday 2020 palette, or 2021. I don't know, girl. Once 2020 hit, I just didn't keep up with time anymore. It was just like, it was all a blur. Now this one, I feel like since they remastered it, people don't talk about the original one anymore. But I feel like this was the palette to put this brand on the map that made a lot of people talk about it. This is the indie brand. This is one of my favorite indie brands. This is Mented Cosmetics. So this is the Plain Jane Remastered. I really leave the Plain Jane Remastered here because I like the Plain Jane a little bit better. So I kept this one here. But I'm talking about the Plain Jane, the original. It was just, this was already here, and who's finna drag an extra palette out when we didn't have to, because this has the majority of the same colors as in that palette. I think there's just a couple of changes, so I figured it was okay to show this one. The pan sizes on these are much smaller now than they used to be. They had bigger pan sizes. I think my Ninhydrin is around here somewhere. Random side note, Ninhydrin is my all-time favorite palette from them. She said there's supposed to be a Ninhydrin 2, and I'm just over here waiting like, but when? Where's Ninhydrin 2? I'm waiting, impatiently waiting for it, because I live for a purple moment, so I need more Ninhydrin. But anyway, this one was what put them on the map. I remember Karen Harris talking about this palette, how wonderful it was, which made me look into the brand. I didn't buy this one though, but I started following the brand, and then when the Ninhydrin hit, I was like, up. So, and then I ended up getting Plain Jane when it went on sale. But I feel like nobody talks about the Plain Jane palette anymore, and I think the shimmers in it are stunning and wonderful. But oddly enough, that's how I ended up connecting with Dionluvsmakeup. I had given her the Plain Jane palette, the anniversary one that they came out with, because this is the third Plain Jane they came out with. They have the original that I have. They have the anniversary edition that I put in a giveaway, that Dionluvsmakeup one, and then they have the one I just showed you. So I can't complain, because I ended up finding out who Dionluvsmakeup is because of my giveaway with the Depth Plain Jane Anniversary Collection palette. So it worked out for me, but I just feel like no one talks about that palette anymore, and I feel like that was one of her more popular ones, along with my all-time favorite one, Ninhydrin. So the next brand I have to talk about, I feel like everybody's talking about this collection when it first came out, and they were loving it. And now you don't really hear about it, but they've come out with so many other collections this year. They're like another kind of version of ColourPop, or I feel like they're getting up there with all the, you know, collabs and palettes that they're coming out with recently, because they used to not do so many, and I feel like now we're just getting an influx from them. But I'm talking about Glamlight. Y'all remember the Happy Hour collection came out, and everybody's talking about the Happy Hour collection. They're talking about how the formula was so wonderful, how the color stories were so nice. I just brought this one because this was the one that was on the top of the 4-pack of all the ones I have. I do have all 4. This is the margarita one. This is actually my least favorite one, but again, we just brought it for representation, so moving on. Yeah, I feel like everybody was talking about this collection. People were saying they didn't like this palette. A lot of people who have colorful makeup from Glamlight, because you have to think Glamlight has so much colorful makeup till it's like, you know, this is just another colorful palette to people, because you got to think about the cake palette and then the ice cream palette. So it's like they already had 2 other really popular colorful palettes, so people were just kind of tired of them with color and wasn't feeling this one. But I understand why this one is colorful, because you have to think about all the different margarita flavors you can get. So that's why it's so many different colorful shades in here. Excuse me. And this is the one with the margarita, so this was the one that worked best. But my favorite ones, random side note, are the Dirty Martini and the Wine palette. I feel like those are exceptional palettes as far as the color story goes. She did a little bit of monochromaticness there, but it worked out beautifully. So I still like these palettes, but just like everybody else on YouTube, it's like when you have to constantly review stuff, I have to talk about different stuff. Like I just talked about their Scooby-Doo collection. And random side note, I did get my lipstick back in the mail for anyone who's curious. They sent me the Zonkies one. That was the one I was missing. Here is the color of it right here. It is what is on my lips right now. So I put it on, and then I put the cherry lip gloss from their Icy collection on top of it. So they did send me the lipstick like they were supposed to, after it wasn't in my box when I unboxed it with you all and showed it. So next one I have to talk about is from Mented Cosmetics. So this is the Whale Song palette. Y'all remember when Tarte came out with that Icy Betch collection or whatever, and they was like, April Fool's, this is a joke, we're not gonna come out with this awesome palette. And everybody was like, hold on, but wait, you should though. And then everybody else just came out with it, because it took them forever to come out with it. I think they came out with it like a year after everybody came out. So Mented was like, hey, you know, you wasn't smart enough to use the idea, we're gonna use it. So they came out with this Whale Song palette, and everybody was talking about how amazing and wonderful it was, and the color story and all that. As you can see, I actually have not used mine yet. I left it here at my grandma's house, because I usually use the Oceanic palette from Ace Beauty, which is why this one's here for if I'm in this color story, in this mood. Plus, I like to leave certain palettes from certain brands to be able to reference, and since they're supposed to be discontinuing this one, or so I'm told, that I want to leave it here. You can still buy the singles, I'm told. It's just you can't buy this palette as a whole. You have to buy every single in here and remake the palette yourself, because it's supposed to be discontinued to make way for new things that I have heard. So, but I feel like everyone was talking about this palette. Everybody's talking about how wonderful it was, how they loved the color story, because this came out around the era when Pop of Blue was popular in palettes, and blue and green palettes were popular. So I was happy that, you know, this existed, because y'all know blue, green, and purple are my colors. I'll occasionally do pink, but blue, green, and purple is everything to me. So the fact that they made a blue and green palette was near and dear to my heart, and I was like, yes, I need it, I love it, thank you, yes. So this was a really popular banger in the indie makeup community, and then I feel like it kind of fizzled off, and everybody was like, oh, moving on to the next thing. So next one I have when this brand first came out, everybody was excited about these palettes. He had just came off having his collab with Beauty Bay and having the weird, crazy color stories that everybody seems to like. I'm always confused by his color stories. It takes me a while to figure out how I look. So I feel like you should know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Made by Mama Mitchell. This is the Head in the Clouds palette, but I have the Head in the Cloud and the Feet on the Ground. And Do You Want Some Milk? And then the recent one he came out with called, I think it's called Where Are the Mangoes or something like that. So this is what it looks like. But you see what I'm saying about the color story and how it's so chaotic? I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I can't even look at this as quads and like see an eye look out of this. I'm like, I literally just have to look around and jump around the palette and try to figure out what I'm going to do. Because it's like looking at rows, I don't see it as cohesive. I don't see anything cohesive about this palette. And for someone like me who, although I look like I come up with somewhat creative looks, it's like sometimes it takes me a really long time. And with this palette, it's always impossible for me. But people really like these and like the formula, and we're talking about them when they first came out a lot. But it's like, after the Do You Want Some Milk came out and like people were saying the shimmers in there felt rubbery and they didn't feel the same, and then the mattes weren't the same in their personal opinion. I know Annette's Makeup Corner specifically was talking about the shimmers and the mattes and how it wasn't the same as the other one, so she was doubting her love of the first two palettes after she had gotten that palette, and she ended up decluttering it in her 2021 decluttering video. So I mean, I guess after like that palette, everything just went downhill, because I actually don't like the mangoes one. If you all watched my review, then you know. But I like the Feet on the Ground palette. Just the Head in the Clouds wasn't doing it for me. But when the first collection came out, I was all about it and bought it like everybody else and talked about it like everybody else. It's just more of, after that, I don't know where the brand went, but that he started being more concerned about the blushes and the eyeliners than he did about palettes. And since I guess those are making him more money and people like them more and they're easier to produce, maybe that's why he haven't really been making palettes, and people haven't really been talking about his palettes. They've been talking about the blushes and all that stuff. But I think you're supposed to be able to put the blushes on your cheeks and your eyes, so maybe that's why he's more focused on that, because it's more cost effective for his business. I don't know, but I know people was raving about those palettes when they first came out, and now I like hear crickets other than hearing about the blushes and the eyeliners. So that's why it's in this video. So next we have let me get these little ones out the way and then I'll go to the big ones. So the Best Wild Obsessions collection, in my personal opinion, I know people like the nude obsessions, but this is the Wild Obsessions from Huda Beauty. Honey, I loved these palettes. I still love these palettes. However, I just don't talk about them that much, and I feel like a lot of people know. But it's like people were raving about these things when they first came out. They're like, these are the good formula of the ones, because if you know anything about Huda Beauty, sometimes the formula of these is trash and sometimes the formula is good. But like, everybody's like, yeah, these are the good formula, and she did a great job with the color stories and all that, and everybody was raving about them. Like, I got a lot of views on my videos, and a lot of other YouTubers did as well. So this is the Chameleon one. This is the one that I gave y'all 5 brands that dupe themselves, where it looks really similar to her Love Fest one. Like, if you take out, I think with the purple one, she did oranges instead. Now like the palettes look the same, and like, you know, it was like, yeah, you don't need both of them. But I really like this one, even though it's somewhat on the neutral side. Y'all know I lived for the Python palette, because what, it's the most colorful of all of them. I just hate that she does this thing where she always has to give you a dark neutral shade for the outer V. It's like, I want a colorful matte shade to go with all these colorful shades you put in here, not this random neutral brown that you thought should suffice for this look. Like, no, give me some colors to go with the rest of this. I do not like that about this palette, which is why I rank it second, and that's why I showed it second. I have them stacked in a certain way to show them off to the way I like them, but that one got knocked down because she can't ever seem to give you a colorful matte to go with all the colorful shimmers and other colorful crease shades she gives. She always wants to give you this neutral shade, and it's like, I don't want that. Give me a colorful matte for once in your life, like your Pat McGrath. Give me a colorful matte for once, please. Thank you. So next I have the Wild Jaguar. This is just a more neutral tone one. It reminded me of the Smoky Obsessions that she originally came out with, and it just seemed like she put purples in it to replace like the silvers, but a lot of the other colors were the same. If you all remember my video on it, that I did a video where I was like, they look the same. I think I did eye looks with both of them to show that they looked the same, in addition to swatching them so you can see that a lot of the colors were the same, because one of the colors in the original palette wasn't as deep as one of the shades in here, but when you swatch them side by side, they were literally the same color. So it was like, if you already had the old one and it was still performing the same, then I didn't feel like you needed to go out in this one. I said what I said. I still say the same thing now. Like, I mean, the shimmers in here have better duochromes that perform better as far as that goes, but I feel like the mattes and a lot of the shades in them were the same. So if you had the old palette, you didn't need the new palette. Last, I have the Wild Tiger. Now, this one didn't release at Sephora, and we all found out later when the Chinese New Year came and the Tiger palette came out. It was the same palette as this. It was just in the red packaging. So I ended up buying this one from her website at 20% off, because I was like, you know, it's 20% off. This collection is still somewhat popular, or was still somewhat new, so I went ahead and got it. But this is my least favorite one. As you can see, we all know why. It's just a boring neutral palette. It reminded me of the gold palette from her, and then it reminded me of the toffee palette from her, so I compared this to the toffee palette. Saw they weren't the same, but it was like, to me, it was close enough to why I didn't need both. And since I didn't really care about neutrals like that, it was just like whatever for me. But you know, everybody raved about these when they came out because they were, for once, a really good formula. She actually had really nice color stories along with really nice packaging. So everybody was raving, everybody was talking, including myself, and then we all were just like, ooh, something else over there is shiny and new, let me go touch that. And then we just kind of forgot it existed. So next one I have, well, I guess I should get the other Huda one out the way, is the Rose Quartz. I feel like people were raving about this last year when it came out as her holiday palette, and now, you know, like everybody's just raving about Empowered and not talking about this. But this one to me is way better than Empowered. I like the color story of this a whole lot better, but again, we've established that mauves and pinkyish purple type tones are more my neutral, so obviously this one be more aesthetically pleasing to me because it's not just my skin tone and the eyeshadow palette with like a pop of trophy wife gold on the lid that I was supposed to be excited about, because those type of looks don't excite me if you're new to this channel. I was more excited about this. Now, I was shocked that as many shades worked in here for me as they did, but they tend to like oxidize and be a bit deeper when you put them on the eyes, so they're not as ashy and light looking as they are in the pan when you put them on the eyes. At least that's what I experienced when I did my video. So I feel like people raved about it, people loved it. I still love mine. Like I said, if I need to do a neutral look, sometimes I'll reach for this, sometimes I'll reach for the retro palette from Natasha or a different palette. But I just feel like other people were just like, oh, okay, that's nice, that's cute, and then they, you know, went on with their day and went on to the next new thing. So I do these videos so you all can look back and reach back in your collections if you have some of these things, like, ooh, well, maybe I should pull that out again, or maybe I should try that again, because, you know, it's really nice and it's good quality, and it's something that you don't have to spend more money on, that might be similar to something new that you were looking at. So that's the purpose of the video. But next I have the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. Everybody was raving about this when they came out, and they have like relaunched this, and I think this is still available on Natasha's website now. But I remember, like, I feel like a good year, like, people just raved about this palette. I made everybody else who didn't buy it feel bad about having it. I didn't feel too bad though, because you got to think that a lot of the colors in here are like warm tone. There's a few like cool tone things in here, but it wasn't enough for me to feel super bad about it. But when it came back out, I was like, I'll go ahead and get it, because at the end of the day, I do review a lot of Natasha Denona, so I felt like I should have it in my collection. And since it came back out, you know, I figured people would be talking about it and raving about it again, and I can have it in my collection that go round. So I think I made a video on this. I think I did a palette rewind or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I did try it out, and I did do a look on Instagram with it. I feel like my girl Dionluvsmakeup recently did a video on this, or at least was talking about it alongside her other Natasha Denona stuff. But like, I feel like the hype died down once you couldn't get it anymore, and I feel like it didn't like pop back up the way I guess she was expecting or hoping after she you know, re-released it back again like she did with the gold palette. But I've already talked about the gold palette in another one of these videos, because we're on video number 3 now. So I figured I'd bring up Metropolis since it's back now, and for the longest time when it was out before it disappeared, people were raving about the palette. I mean raving about it, and I was just like, oh, okay, so I missed out on something. But that was before she had perfected the cream formula. She perfected the cream formula in Metropolis, but she had cream formulas before then that I didn't like the cranberry palette. If you all remember the cranberry palette from Holiday, the 5-pan, it had the cream formula, but people just thought there was something wrong with their shadow, so then she just re-brought it out without that cream formula in it, because people weren't feeling the cream formula and they were turning it to Sephora, and you know, she was losing her coins. So she had to address and fix that. So by the time it got to Metropolis, because I think she did another cream formula before she did Metropolis, and it didn't work out that well either. I think it might have been the Love palette, don't quote me, but I didn't buy it initially because of the cream formula issue, but you know. There we go. Next we have the Moon Spell palette from Mandy Emmy Ways. If you don't tell me this was not hyped up and raved about by everybody in this community, you lie. I feel like everybody's talking about Moon Spell and how wonderful it was and how amazing it was. I will say I like the color story of this one better than the new one, because it has like the neutrals in the middle, then it has the green and blue moment for people like me, and then it has the purple and pink moment for people like me. And then if you wanted to use this as an everyday palette, you can just use the middle part. So I feel like he did a good job with the first one, but he said the second one, people were telling him that he should do more berry and like red and purplish tones, so that's why that palette's more dedicated to that color story. I actually prefer this color story, so I'm not as crazy about the second one as much as I like this one. But you know, that's just a personal thing for me. Anyway, this palette was highly coated, raved about. I still see it being sold on Bakerie now for like $76 and all these type of crazy prices or whatever. But since you can't get it anymore, I feel like people stopped raving about it, because it's like, you know, you don't want to make your audience feel bad. Like, I wouldn't use Morte for the longest time because you all couldn't get it, but then they came back out with it, so I feel like I can use it now in looks and do stuff with it, because you know, they re-released it, and whoever wanted to get it this time should have got their hands on it, because I think they came out like 2 or 3 years ago, they say, and then they finally brought it back because people kept complaining, kept begging, and kept whining, and kept asking about the palette. So we only got one more palette left. I'll show it to you, and then we'll have to get a new battery because the light's flashing, it's dying. So this is the All I Ever Wanted from Unearthly Cosmetics. Mine is so old, it says Alien Cosmetics, but my girl Dr. Asher, her makeup, was telling the Unearthly that the community said they wanted her to bring back this palette, the owner Hayden, because everybody loved it so much. And I mean, they did, and I'm sure they still do, but it's like I feel like nobody really talks about it anymore. But it could just be because she came out with All I Ever Wanted Part 2, and people are more concerned about that, especially because it's a good dupe for the Danessa Myricks Lightworks Volume 5, I believe. I did a whole video comparing them and doing the eye look, so it's like if you are interested in that, you should buy the one from Unearthly instead. But I feel like people aren't really talking about this one anymore because the new one came out, so I'm assuming that's why. I don't know, don't quote me, but those are all the palettes I have pretty much. Wait, no, I have 2 more luxury ones, so let me go change this battery for real before it dies, girl. I'll be right back. Okay, y'all, so next I have Mother and her what is it, Divine Rose 8 Divine Rose 2 Artistry palette. So it's Mothership 8 Divine Rose 2 Artistry. Do y'all remember when everybody was talking about this just because she had this dual chrome in here and she had never done dual chrome in her palette? So everybody was raving about it. I have the limited edition rose gold packaging, but yeah, I remember when everyone was raving about this shade right here. Like y'all seeing the camera, y'all seeing the mirror, like it's got this green shift, and inside it shows up as gold. So it's like everybody's raving about this palette. You hear me? It's pink, but then in the mirror it's got the green gold flecks to it. So it's like everyone raving about this palette. Like everyone was just talking about how amazing it was and how they liked this one over the original Divine Rose, because the original Divine Rose was an everyday rose palette, and this was so exceptional and different and exciting because you have this pink, I guess like satiny matte type shade, and then you have this deeper shade here, and then you got all your neutrals that go over the top for every day. So it's like everybody was really raving and talking about how amazing and wonderful this palette was, including myself. I'm not gonna front, because I was excited like everybody else, like what, Mother out here giving dual chromes? But I guess she was like, Natasha will not outdo me. Or maybe it's the other way around, because I don't remember when Trio Chrome came out, but I feel like Trio Chrome came out before this palette. You can comment down below and let me know. Girl, I honestly don't remember. I told you after 2020 hit, I don't remember. Don't remember anything. But everyone raved about this palette. This was some people's favorites video. This wasn't my favorites video. But then again, you got to think, like I said, new things are coming up all the time, so we kind of just forgot about it. But I want you to pull it out and remember, girl. So that's why I'm putting in this video. Pull it out and remember, girl. Especially because it costs you all them coins. Pull it out and remember. So last but not least, I have the Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette. I feel like when this one came out, everybody was raving about how wonderful it was, how the quality was and all that. The only thing people didn't like was these like shades at the top. So like he worked on the shimmers, I will give him that. I feel like when he does give critiques, he does like fix stuff, like with the blush palette. People saying that the blush palette was too pigmented and they couldn't use it, so he made the very lighter one that the people that were complaining about couldn't use. And then he was like, I guess he felt like the people he had already made one for that could use the shades, we could buy them individually, or we could, you know, already have bought the palette because it works for our skin tone better. So I appreciate the fact that he does listen to his audience. Like everybody's talking about how horrible the shimmers were up here and how the sequin shade they weren't feeling, so he literally just put all shimmers at the top minus the cream that he normally does and made the formula better. Now I just wish he would fix all these mid-tone like shades that he has in here, but I'm assuming he thinks like the cream is supposed to like make up for the fact that the shades aren't like super deep and you just use the cream to deepen them up. But I feel like even using the cream, it doesn't give me enough depth to it. But I remember when people were raving about this palette. Now people are raving about the new one that came out this year, but again, I can understand because that one I feel like it's a million times better than this one. You don't have that sequin shade, and the shimmers in it are a million times better. But it's just funny to see how people rave about something 1 minute and then the next minute you don't hear them talk about it at all. So you don't, I feel like I don't hear anybody talking about the original palette at all now. All we hear is about the new volume 2, and again, myself included. But I said from the beginning that I felt like, you know, the browns weren't necessarily going dark enough and the cream didn't necessarily make it deep enough. And from what I see, I feel like a lot of his palettes just give a lot of mid-tone to people my skin tone, so it's like I have to pull in something different, which is unfortunate. But you know, like, the formula is really nice and it's good, and I usually can make the cream work to somewhat satisfy my outer V preferences, but I feel like it could be a little bit deeper and a little bit better for me. But those are my thoughts, and those are all the palettes I have for this episode. Once hype palettes, where are they now? So you can comment down below and tell me if you remembered about these palettes, or if me doing this video made you pull some of these palettes out of your collection, because I was looking at a couple like, hey, maybe I should pull those out, like the Rose Quartz one, and then Natasha Denona Metropolis, because I think I've only used that twice since I got it. I did a look with like the blues and the like warm tones, and then I did a look with like the green earthy tones. Looks like I should probably do some more with those two in particular. So those two I'm mainly eyeing myself, because I, believe it or not, I used the Margarita palette like last week in an eye look. It's for one of the thumbnails of the videos I've already had posted, but those are all the palettes I had to talk about. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Remember, you all are diamonds. Like I said, comment down below and tell me if you gonna pull out any of these palettes now that you saw me pull them out and show them to you again. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Be blessed, girl. Bye.